Hello everyone. Today's talk is going to be an interesting one, and before I begin, I feel like I need to read this quote by a being named Shanti Deva. And it's a Buddhist quote. And so the quote goes and says, "There is no evil similar to anger, and no discipline like patience. Strive always, therefore, for tolerance, cultivating it in varied ways." And so perhaps the best title for this talk would be How to Cultivate Tolerance in Varied Ways. So cultivating tolerance in varied ways. Let us look at this idea and see that humanity is at first being based on his ability and also is being based on his ability and also is being based on his ability to see. Now, when a human being, when an existential form, let's say like man, is becoming self-aware as if he's realizing who the reflection in the mirror is, on some subtler level, there is a presence that has existentially built up to make you able to see multidimensionality. All these things, the world that is here is a world that's been always changing, and we are simply, each human being is a visitor in its temporal time. In other words, during its temporal passage. Now, it's very important to have tolerance, guys, because this is something I couldn't understand, and I was a very patient guy. I was a very patient guy, but I still did not understand the true value of tolerance and what tolerance means. And so, I began to see that tolerance meant for me to give myself a moment without my noise, without me having a thought about myself, and seeing where all manifestation is being absorbed through. What is consciousness and who is this conscious viewer? When such things become curious, guys, reality is shaking. And so you must make the existential choice of how responsible you want to be for your self-awareness. Do you want your self-awareness to casually enhance? It can, but it'll be very slow. Or do you want to become a lover of the unknown? And just like the mystic and the yogi, simply sit down and in your moments of life observe the multitude of sight that is present there. Experience your multidimensionality here and do not cage yourself to suggestions of the past. A suggestion of the past could be that I said something. Do you see? A suggestion of the past could be any manifestation of consideration, and it's all in the present moment. And so novelty is where man's mind gets an empty moment to understand itself. And the newest creations will always suggest the state of consciousness of the Creator. Man is at a point where he has developed an engineer's mindset. And so there are engineers in this world, and that sight simply suggests that when you see a problem, you're trying to fix it. And so where is the space of your allowance to see what else can be done? Where is the choice of thought to be free? Well, you begin to see if we are going based on the basis of the problem is defining certain imagery in which on the subtler planes of consideration is just an outcome, but it seems to be an unmovable outcome. And so man must see where the effort to get things done comes from. And this effort, again, kind of reflects back to how much you are being aware of the nature of form. Consciousness is not ignorant. It never could be. It is you who needs to observe what your experience needs to be and its quality. And not that you just have a control. It's not a remote control. It's like something where gradually you're just paying attention to your life process a bit more, your life, how you're living, and you're suddenly realizing, gosh, I don't need that. And you begin to see it's like my vision of a healthy being is shifting through states of consciousness and becoming more self-aware. Is someone who is, in a sense, suddenly he's not avoiding this problem. It's not that suddenly you just get everything in a box. It's not that the gift is like that. The gift is suddenly your vision enhancing to a point where you don't ignore your problems. You don't ignore your sources of depression, and you stand there and you as a moment of existence are just present. You're not worried and you're untouched. You exist. And now with this awareness, it is not that you must so much think of, oh gosh, externally I'm going to go do this and that. No, it's more of how you're aware of externality, and these are the subtler aspects of how man is considering himself to be existent while being aware of his non-existence. Because how else can we ask the question? Philosophy would not exist if non-existence did not leave that absent room for such questions. You must realize in this reality, the greatest answer is you, and not the idea of you, but the most directest experience of you that is your absolute reality, your absolute truth. So no longer search for petty truths which you feel they're not even worth searching for. If you're calling something truth, you better be observing it with such a depth that you are seeing the existential connection. You are seeing, it's as if your depth of gaze is shifting your consciousness and you never needed an external stimulus. It's through a self-awareness. It is through a sense of knowingness where you are found within all things. So no longer space becomes an issue, and the time is no longer same, but your experience is abstract. You don't lose your linearity. You're still here, everything's functioning externally. It's just that every moment you're going in, you're just so much more receptive of sight, color, and just noises. Everything is becoming more aware of where it's being kept, and it is in your awareness. It's your aware presence. It's a very big thing, guys. This thing, it's actually very simple, but it's a subtlety that the human mind has skipped and has not built on, you know. Just like how we can pay attention, let us say, to the details of a picture, let us think right now, man is just paying so much attention to the detail of the picture that he cannot see the whole picture. And when man cannot see the whole picture, there has to be an allowance for the eyes of man to change, or there will be a transition into where the whole world changes for your eyes to change. There are two types of change, I believe. One where the world changes your vision, and one where your origination of vision changes the world. And this has been simply the quest for many to observe and see what reality is, do you know? Consciousness explorers is simply what life experience is. If you are alive, you have been studying the movements of life since birth, because that's how you've been getting around. If you begin to see that the concept of tolerance has become meaningful for you, it's because you have seen its application. Sometimes really reducing the speed of how early we're acting gives us a certain moment of just not relaxation, but just a silence where we can begin to observe ourselves. You will begin to see, if you take, as very playfully of course I'm saying, if you take a vow of silence and you just don't speak, not that you have to or you're trying to achieve some outcome, just because if you just want to hear, you want to listen, if you just don't talk for a day and you just go around, phenomenal things will begin to happen, because you will begin to see how much was being said and you were not listening to. Right now, man, it's like his physical health condition is causing too much of a limitation, because his spotlight of attention is on, oh gosh, I'm gonna die, this body's gonna change. Man needs to get to such a point of existential and experiential confrontation of his body where the change does not bother him. He is simply still present as the awareness he is. And consciousness was never ignorant. It was the man who was caught in an idea who couldn't figure out where he was. But we are not men. We are the origination of man. We are not the awareness of man. We are the origination of the awareness of man. And not to get too dramatic, but you begin to see that life will not show itself to you unless you show yourself to life. Every day, you're no longer challenging others. You're trying to enhance your self-experience, not in a greedy way, just in the sense that you're recognizing that the flows of life and the greater intelligence of life is one when it has to trust life. So without an existential compassion, without a love for the life around you, there's no access to the sense of multidimensionality, which is your awareness to what you are. And what the mystic realizes, compared to what a student who's just memorized a textbook written by God knows who, you begin to see that what is present here is beyond conception. So when I see that if you know what your house is and suddenly someone comes up to you and says, hey man, no, this is not your house, and you're like, this is my house, you know that's your house because you've been there, you've been present there, there's been active awareness to your expression. But you need to begin observing the nature of activity, and as you begin to do, you begin to see that it moves through realms of the undefinable, the unspeakable. We cannot talk about many things because simply we cannot have each other's experiences on some level. But on some level, we are being created within one another's experience. So the multidimensionality of our self-awareness takes away the game of trying to survive in this world as the fittest. It's as if, man, the reason he does not have time for that act, because he's realizing he's beyond space and time. And so when conception is shaking, you begin to prioritize your life by what is most significant to your intuition, to the core of your being. Some decisions you're making for your work tomorrow and your future projects, and that's, fine and where it is, But some decisions need to be made for your life force, life process. Perhaps you have come here not to just be in one environment. You have come here to move, have certain conversations with certain people, go through certain ranges of experiences regardless of their suffering, and to just come back with a knowing that you will be there when the moment requires you. Do not think, guys, we should not be too ignorant. Mankind has not come for himself only here. We have not just come here to just see that we're bodies and to just, dance around mindlessly. We are here to move to dimensions of perception no human being has ever gone before. That is the task of the new generations. It is now time to enhance the quality of our perception and also the quality of our communication, and to see that man's next sense of transcendence is coming from his creative ability, not his ability to objectify himself and take less existential responsibility. What that means is that the people who are not meditating sometimes, or who are not life-sensitive, or just very ego-sensitive, I wonder if they ever have asked, what does life want from me? Rather than just what I want. And you begin to see what life wants from you is your complete clarity to what it is. And so you begin to see it is here where you are no longer just an individual in a story and a certain character which you're trying to maintain. You have just discovered of the intelligence of the storyteller. And so it is up to you to shake the limitation when you are limitless. And so once that lion dressed in sheep's clothing begins to go to the lake and sees its face and it's like, holy shit, I'm not a sheep. It's that moment where you will begin to see that it's as if earthquakes of awareness and cognition and understanding just come through you. There have been certain natural phenomena within me that have totally reframed my vision. And not in the sense of me being something and me being changing. It's just as if like my awareness has lent naturally for this aspect of myself to grow. And growth becomes something where you feel you're really making a choice for, but when you look around, you're like, wait a minute, now everything's growing with this existential cosmic intelligence. So it is the task of man for the future generations to study how he is, what his essence is, and the multidimensionality of his being. Mr.Within is taking this frontier and saying that we are multidimensional beings, and if we're not aware of it, we are being ignorant of the lands that we must explore. But trust me, sometimes man thinks that the journey is, there's no point of going out because the journey is not good. But once you just go to that journey and you just trust the flow of life, you begin to see that, wow, that decision you made was, that intuitive decision was valuable, not because of its rationality, just because of how accurately it took you. It's as if you were in a flow and you reached a certain destination. Mankind must realize that because we don't know the answers to many existential questions, we must begin developing systems of clarity and contribution where we are really having a position to evolve the database of man's knowing of where he is. Because if suddenly we're realizing our state of consciousness is different, then it's as if forget culture and the way you've been taught. Forget your conditioning. It's about how you are present to a different state of consciousness. Different elevation and awareness to your presence, to your life. You will begin to see it's a video game, it's a simulation until you take the existential responsibility that all vision belongs to all vision, that you are present in a moment unspeakable, and do not dare compare when you are in the presence of the beloved, when you're in the presence of the cosmic whole. Your collective consciousness is there, and so it is your ignorance that fears, and fear is simply just as natural as the color of a rock. And so when you become aware of it, you will see that the fluidity and how the river moved suggested that there never was blindness when you were the truth. Observe nature and cultivate tolerance in varied ways. You'll begin to see that it will shift your perception because it is allowing you to be more mindful. It's as if it's that moment where you double checked and there was a firm clarity there, you know. So you will begin to see that all movements will lead you to the greatest experience you can have of other, but at the peak end of the experience of the other or the external thing you can do, you will see that you are internally manifest, and as the depth of that is found, it is an unspeakable aspect of your experience, but you are still present. Do not forget this. You are present. And so this is where the pilots of consciousness, their whole presence will be emanating, how many beings can develop and consciously recognize themselves in subtler planes. When you see that man, really, it's like for years he's been fearing the apocalypse, as if his mind's been thinking like that. You begin to see that the only cure is not changing or stopping the apocalypse or trying to attack God or something. Do you see? It's all about how conscious you are of the creation that is here and the creator that is here, and the simultaneous knowing that the good and bad were wings where without one of them there could not be the flight of existential manifestation in regards to the physical framework that man sees. The search is an intuitive one. And so we must really recognize how we can connect that and integrate that into our current systems and sciences and theories. Because education was just developed by a certain viewpoint of what it needs to be communicated. But when the being realizes that he is his greatest communication, and that all of this manifestation, regardless of his effect, cause and effect, is in an instant of knowing, Mr. Within is found in the sense that you have activated your collective consciousness and collective intelligence, and you will see that it was never an idea and it was never you who was keeping you here. Your individuality is present again through the collective. This is all experiential. And do not judge stories, do not compare your stories, do not talk about yourself in abstract realms too much. Because if you do, you are not being sincere. Because sincerity means you don't talk, you act. That's what sincerity means. Sincerity means if you've been conditioned to do something in the same way and you really feel that it's not proper, you don't do it. It means that moments where sincerity is when self is honest with self. And in that moment of the distinction of conception, you're always basking in selfless observance. Be tolerant and recognize that it's becoming a bit important to look at your perception now, and to also look at what consciousness means to you, and states of being mean to you, and self-awareness to you mean, and reality. Because if these things are not looked at, you will be lost to the decisions made before us. And if a bunch of our human fellows made mistakes, then then guess what? We need to correct it as the consciousness that is aware of those mistakes. That is why there's a significance that when you see something wrong and you know that you can correct it, you follow that intuitive gut and you go correct it. Whether it's an apology or whether it's saying something to someone you never even, you don't even know at all, and you're just walking there with an intuition of you don't even know what you're doing, to just communicate something, a few words, and come back. And then you wonder on the way back, did I just communicate these to this person? And you begin to see that the state of being of that person changed by the addition of those imageries to their consciousness. And it was rewarding, not in the fact that there's ever reward. The greatest reward is self-awareness. And where the clarity of being leads, which seems to be within. And remember, you are in a moment as a human being and as human consciousness where it can be very playfully said that it's as if human beings are treasure revealers. Treasure revealers of what kind of treasure? The treasures of their consciousness, and how there is an expression here beyond the ideology that's been suggesting a world that's about to end, or needs a beginning in a certain way. The clarity means we take the first information from nature rather than the interpretation of nature. And so if a child is being told what a tree is in a book without seeing it, then there is that thought that we are dulling down reality by simply not showing it to our youth. And it seems that is leading the ambitions of people to more of a survival of a fittest attitude, which again is a pattern that's been going on for too long. Survival of the fittest was true to develop the human form to a certain point of self-awareness, but suddenly as the new dimensions of experience have opened up for a self-aware being, that self-awareness is the capability beyond one stem of reality. Do you believe that human beings are as if these beings that have just woken up? We have just sprouted from the soil. And as we're beginning to realize that we are not the dirt, but at the same time we are not the light, but we're constantly growing in between these experiences of who we are and what we are. And you will begin to see it as there where your belief system was never there. Because you were here in such a way that such expression is unspeakable. It is your knowing. It's an inner thing. And the reason I say it's unspeakable, because you'll begin to see it's suddenly relevant to some memories that were just personally for you. So what that means is if you suddenly remember something that in your silence, gosh, you saw something very remarkable, And you could go tell others and they could say, no, you didn't see it, yes, you did see it, but you will begin to see that it's for you to allow you to grow. And so you need to really realize that in this reality, regardless of your choice, you are existing, you're living, and such an intelligence is transcendentally always moving beyond itself. And guess what? Those who are tolerant and patient will see this, and it will actually make your life go quickly. Because when you suddenly stop going to a position, when suddenly like some opportunity just comes to you, hey, let's go do this, and something, let's say, in your gut says you shouldn't go, and let's say you trust it and you don't go, and it seems very ridiculous why you haven't gone, you begin to see that it's like we are bothered by how we are looking at things more than we are bothered by how others are looking at things. And once this realization is found, very peacefully we have been present through clarity. Be tolerant, and your self-awareness shall develop. And it shall be one where no other man needs to give you a promise, but your flow of what you are doing in your life will suggest it to you. Much blessings and namaste.